in interesting times. Today's stories. Former U.S. President Obama attacks Trump and Republicans. Ethiopian activist Jay Mohammed says he doesn't regret a single day. Ministry says Beijing vows countermeasures if the U.S. slaps new tariff. Britain points finger at Russia over spy poisoning. Michael Moore presents Fahrenheit 11/9 at the Toronto International Film Festival. Plus, Squamish Days Lager Sports highlights lumberjack skills. This is Eagle News Canada, bringing you stories from around the globe. I am Cara Cabusao. Barack Obama assailed U.S. Republicans Friday for failing to keep President Donald Trump in check in a forceful return to the political fray aimed at firing up Democratic voters ahead of key elections. Since leaving office, the 44th U.S. president has pointedly avoided direct criticism of his successor, making a calculated effort not to utter Trump's name. But on Friday, the gloves came off. In a nod to the turbulence of the past week, which saw allegations of a secret resistance working inside the White House, the 57-year-old Obama poured scorn on the idea that everything will turn out okay because some of Trump's staff are secretly ignoring the boss's order. The Democratic former president assailed Republicans as unwilling to find the backbone to challenge Trump head-on, accusing them instead of answering outrageous actions with vague statements of disappointment. Obama's remark to an auditorium of college students in Illinois, the state he represented before he won the White House, marked the opening salvo in a series of campaign stops aimed at boosting fellow Democrats in November's midterm elections, when voters will elect much of Congress and 36 state governorship. In a wide-ranging speech punctuated by frequent applause, Obama criticized the divisive politics of the era, decrying Trump's attacks on the media and the judiciary, his eagerness to work with Russia while neglecting traditional alliances. But he also sounded a hopeful note about the apparent mobilization of Democratic voters.
It did not start with Donald Trump. He is a symptom, not the cause.
The president, who was traveling in North Dakota, took a swipe back at his predecessor after the speech, telling a crowd of supporters at a fundraiser, quote, "I watched it, but I fell asleep." Taking aim at a key campaign argument by Trump's Republicans, Obama challenged them for laying claim to a roaring economic recovery that saw 200,000 jobs added last month.
I mention all this just so when you hear how great the economy is doing right now, let's just remember when this recovery started.
Trump fired back by pointing at the country's 4.2% growth rate for the second quarter, accusing Obama of trying to take credit for this incredible thing that's happening. Had Democrats won control of Congress 2 years ago, he jeered, quote, "Instead of having 4.2 up, I believe, honestly, we'd have 4.2 down." Having devoted most of his time since leaving office to writing his memoirs and setting up his presidential foundation in Chicago, Obama will be back in the limelight in coming weeks with campaign stops planned in California Saturday and Ohio on Thursday. The hugely popular former First Lady Michelle Obama will also be bringing star power to Democratic races in Las Vegas and Miami late this month. Democrats are hoping to ride an anti-Trump blue wave to take control of the House of Representatives and also battling for seats in the Senate. Obama's speech was a preview of the arguments he will make on the campaign trail, partly in an attempt to reach out to voters in parts of the country he won in 2012, but which voted for Trump in 2016. The former president implored the young Illinois audience to take a stand in November, warning our democracy depends on it. Jawar Mohammed was once so hated by the Ethiopian state that the media activist was accused of coup plotting while viewers of his anti-government broadcasts were hunted down. Yet today he hosts politicians and diplomats in his hotel room in the Ethiopian capital and enjoys the protection of government-supplied bodyguards. The dramatic change in Jawar's fortunes mirrors the breakneck reforms implemented in recent months by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who has sought to open up his repressive nation. To his supporters, Jawar is a freedom fighter who, through his US-based Oromia media network, promoted protests that rocked Ethiopia's ruling party and led to Abiy's rise. To his detractors, he's an ethnic hate monger intent to destabilizing Africa's second most populous country. In Ethiopia, there is scarcely a more polarizing figure, a role for which Jawar makes no apologies.
I fought for Oromo people. I don't regret a single day. I wanted to bring down the bloody government that was killing my people. I was willing to take whatever it takes to bring them down. And we were strategically guided, we worked hard, we woke up before them and we slept after them.
Abiy came to power in April after the resignation of his predecessor, Haile Mariam Desalegn, whose last years in the office were defined by anti-government unrest and nationwide emergency declarations. Jawar said the protests that happened where, how, and when they did was no accident.
We planned it. The people who were organizing the protest and the people who were men are almost the same. There is an overlapping of leadership, there is an overlapping of interests, there is an overlapping of strategy. We coordinated our media strategy with grassroots mobilizing strategy.
Jawar used his media network to coordinate protesters from his Oromo ethnic group against the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, a coalition of 4 ethnically based parties that ruled since 1991. Up next, Beijing vows countermeasures if U.S. slaps new tariff. Britain points finger at Russia over spy poisoning. Michael Moore presents Fahrenheit 11/9 at the Toronto International Film Festival. Eagle News Canada will return in a moment. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News Canada. President Donald Trump's trade policy faces a key crossroads on Thursday as officials try to reach a deal with Canada, and he will decide whether to impose a huge wave of new tariffs on China. With Canada, the largest U.S. trading partner, talks seem to be on track to agree on a rewrite of the North American Free Trade Agreement. But there have been no further discussions with China to try to resolve the bitter dispute with Beijing. And Trump could announce the next step, which would impose steep duties on half the goods the U.S. imports from the world's second-largest economy as soon as Thursday. The deadline for public comment on the next wave of punitive taxes on $200 billion of annual imports from China expires Thursday, and Trump reportedly wants to impose the tariffs immediately. That would take the total goods targeted to $250 billion of the $500 billion imported each year. Trump has had Beijing in his crosshairs since he took office and has applied increasing pressure to try to convince the country to change its policies, allow more imports, and reduce the $335 billion trade deficit. In Beijing, China's Commerce Ministry said Thursday it was readying its countermeasures.
如果美方不顾征求意见中绝大多数企业的反对，一意孤行，对华采取任何新的加征关税措施，中方将不得不做出必要反制。
Gao said those countermeasures includes slapping tariffs on $60 billion of U.S. imports.
中美双方就经贸问题在华盛顿举行的副部级磋商以后，双方工作层仍在继续保持接触和沟通，就彼此关心的问题交换意见，致力于解决中美经贸问题。谢谢。
China previously pledged to retaliate dollar for dollar with tariffs of its own, but since it imports less than $200 billion a year in U.S. goods, it has run out of room to match the U.S. firepower. But businesses warn there are other ways China can strike back, through regulations and other administrative means. The last effort at a negotiated solution came in late August with meetings between low-level officials, but nothing came of them. Gao said the two sides were still in contact and communicating on a working level and exchanging opinions on issues of mutual concern to work towards resolving the China-U.S. trade problems. U.S. businesses have become increasingly concerned about the exchange of tariffs, which are raising prices for manufacturers and hurting U.S. consumers and farmers. But Trump has been unapologetic, insisting that his tough tactics will work. Meanwhile, talks are due to continue for another day with Canada to keep NAFTA 2.0 as a three-party trade deal, although Trump on Wednesday said he would surprise the public with a new name. Canada Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland said the sides are making good progress towards a deal to revise the North American Free Trade Agreement, but talks will continue to resolve remaining issues. Officials were tasked with reviewing a series of issues and were due to meet late into the night and report back on Thursday, when the ministers will resume talks. The talks have been hung up over Canada's insistence on retaining a dispute resolution mechanism in Chapter 19 and the U.S. objections over Ottawa's tight controls over the dairy market. Britain pointed the finger at Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday for a nerve agent attack on a former Russian spy in England, a charge that Moscow rejected as unacceptable. The leaders of the United States, France, Germany, and Canada later said that they had full confidence in Britain's assessment that officers from Russia's military intelligence service were behind the Novichok attack that nearly killed Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia in March. British Security Minister Ben Wallace said that Putin was ultimately responsible for the poisoning in the southwestern city of Salisbury, prompting an angry response from Moscow. Britain has previously accused Russia of orchestrating the attack, but Moscow denies any involvement and insists that it is ready to cooperate in any investigation. London and its allies expelled dozens of Russian diplomats after the poisoning, prompting a tit-for-tat response from Moscow and plunging relations to a new low. In a major new development, Prime Minister Theresa May announced Wednesday that police had issued international arrest warrants for those two suspects identified as Alexander Petrov and Ruslan Boshirov. She said that they were members of Russian military intelligence and acted on orders from a high level, but Wallace went further when asked if Putin had any responsibility. Britain briefed the United Nations Security Council Thursday on its latest findings, with Russia vehemently denying involvement. Russian Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia accused Britain of spreading the same repeated lies and presenting an unfounded, mendacious cocktail of facts.
В выступлении мы услышали все тот же набор лжи о якобы двойных агентах как законной цели убийства для российских спецслужб. Я не буду перечислять весь этот бездоказательный лживый коктейль. Похожие инсинуации звучали вчера из уст британского премьер-министра.
A joint statement by leaders of France, Germany, the US, and Canada on Thursday said they had full confidence in the British assessment as they chose to reiterate our outrage over the incident. The government is also reviewing visa applications by wealthy Russians in Britain and is preparing new powers to stop people at the border if suspected of malign state activity. The Skripal survived the poisoning, but a local man, Charlie Rowley, picked up a fake perfume bottle containing Novichok weeks later. Rowley gave it to his girlfriend, Dawn Strugres, who later died. British prosecutors accuse Petrov and Bosharov of conspiracy to murder Skripal, attempted murder, and the use of banned chemical weapon. They said they would not formally demand their extradition, as Russia does not extradite its citizens, but have obtained a European arrest warrant for the pair. Hot documentaries, reboots of classic horror franchises, plenty of politics, and of course, Oscar bait galas will be served up at this week's Toronto International Film Festival. More than 300 feature and short films from 74 countries, 31,300 minutes of film in total, will be screened at the 43rd Toronto International Film Festival, the biggest film festival in North America, which opens Thursday and runs through September 16. The event is crucial for Oscar-conscious studios and distributors, attracting hundreds of filmmakers, actors to Canada's largest city. Big names set to make an appearance on the festival's 1,108 feet of red carpet include Alec Baldwin, Steve Carell, Penelope Cruz, Drake, Matthew McConaughey, Robert Redford, Chris Pine, and Hilary Swank. Several directors will also make their English language debuts, including Xavier Dolan with his much-anticipated The Death and Life of John F. Donovan. Meanwhile, Chilean director Sebastian Lelio, who earned an Oscar for the 2017 film A Fantastic Woman, will premiere the English language remake of his 2013 Spanish language breakout feature Gloria Bell with Julianne Moore. There is also a huge documentary lineup with profiles of legendary music producer Quincy Jones, influential director Ingmar Bergman, and soprano Maria Callas, as well as The Elephant Queen, which follows the journey of an elephant herd and the truth about killer robots. Several of the documentaries are still looking for distributors, so they're some of the hottest films in terms of acquisitions, he said. For Politicos, Michael Moore is back chronicling the rise of Donald Trump in Fahrenheit 11/9, an unofficial sequel to his 2004 hit documentary Fahrenheit 9/11. Alongside, exposes of strategist Steve Bannon in American Dharma and Russian leaders in Putin's Witnesses and Werner Herzog's Meeting Gorbachev.
We need action. We are in a war to get our country back. Anybody who doesn't understand that is going to be sorely disappointed in the results of what is about to happen over these next few years with Donald Trump.
Jason Reitman directs Hugh Jackman, Vera Farmiga, and J.K. Simmons in the biopic The Front Runner about the U.S. Senator Gary Hart's 1988 presidential run that was derailed by a scandalous affair. In past years, films such as Spotlight, Slumdog Millionaire, and The King's Speech went on from winning the Toronto Festival's Audience Prize for Best Picture to take the top honor at the Oscars. Many of the films positioned for accolades this year, including a remake of A Star is Born with Lady Gaga, Damien Chazelle's First Man, starring Ryan Gosling as astronaut Neil Armstrong, and the Western The Sisters Brothers, starring Joaquin Phoenix, will have already premiered at the Venice or New York film festivals before they are screened in Toronto. Coming up, Kathleen Cruz takes us to the world of vlogger sports. Eagle News Canada will return shortly. This is Eagle News Canada. I am Cara Cabusao. Ever heard of vlogger sports? Eagle News correspondent Kathleen Cruz takes us to this year's Squamish Days Vlogger Sports Festival. Take a look.
Competitive vloggers from around the world are gathered here in Squamish, Canada for the 61st annual Squamish Days Vlogger Sports Festival.
Vlogger Sport is a historical event that reenacts all traditional skills in the past for occupation or to build homes. It is dubbed as Canada's ultimate heritage sport.
It's a 5-day festival. We have numerous events that take place over the weekend, but of course our feature event for the weekend is our 2 logger sport shows, and that draws competitors from all over the world to compete in logger sports. We're celebrating our 61st anniversary this year. We started in 1957 and it was a one-day show just with logger sports, and now we've grown into a 5-day festival that includes bed races, an 8K run, pancake breakfast parade, kids events, all kinds of stuff for the whole family.
Novice and professional lumberjacks show off their stamina and strength in different logging sports events, which require tenacity and skills. Squamish is known as the outdoor recreational capital of Canada, as the event has attracted loggers worldwide.
This year we have over 80 competitors here today. We had approximately the same number of competitors here yesterday, and they come from all over the world. Lots of people from Canada, BC, Alberta, the East Coast, lots of people from the United States, California, Washington, Idaho, Montana, and we also have competitors from around the world, Australia, New Zealand, Denmark. We've had competitors from Norway, Sweden in the past as well. So we're very lucky that Squamish is also such a beautiful place to be, and we have such a great event that they want to come back all the time.
This year's world-class lumberjack competition highlights different events. First, there's the Choker Man's Race, where contestants race to the end of the log while carrying a 34-kilogram, 8-meter-long rigging choker and securing it before returning to the starting line. Sawing or speed bucking is not an easy task either. This requires hot saws to cut a big log. Hand bucking is not a very known activity, but for loggers, it's a no-secret skill. A giant piece of metal is used to cut through a log with the help of an oiler that lubricates the saw. One of the crowd's favorite is the tree climbing event. Competitors must race to the top of an 80-feet tree, then sliding back down as fast as they can.
Well, I've always been a real backer of the tree climb because it's such a dangerous event and it takes a one-of-a-kind person to do it. They have a rule where you have to touch the tree every 15 feet.
Another crowning event is the tree falling. Competitors have to race in sawing the base of the tree with speed and accuracy. The most exciting to see is when logs are starting to fall one by one on the marked ground. Other events also include axe throwing, burling, tree topping, and butcher block chopping.
This has been a tradition and part of history in the West Coast Canadian culture. Reporting from Squamish, Canada, for Eagle News, I am Kathleen Cruz. I am 1 with 25.
Thanks, Kathleen. That is this week's Eagle News Canada. Join us next week for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at Eaglenews.PH and EagleNewsLive.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/EagleNewsPH. Thank you for watching. I am Kara Kabusao. I am 1 with 25.